Right, so I thought I'd play a bit of, well, Forza 6. Ah, there we go. Thought I'd play a bit of Forza 6, just making sure that the stream was working. I'm actually in the progress of playing a game right now. I've turned the in-game music off because we don't want to get a copyright strike now, do we? The few seconds of any potentially licensed music that may be heard in the background that would damage the music industry beyond repair, that would destroy the music career of millions of artists. Or not. Anyway, this isn't the Force? No, it isn't the Force. It's Forza 6, but it's not the Force. And I am not playing the Porsche expansion. Sorry, it's early in the morning and I'm not really with it. I shouldn't be really. It's relatively early in the morning. Probably no one will watch this, which I'm not bothered. Most people tend to see my streams when I post them up on YouTube anyway. Forza 6. It's not the Porsche expansion. God, I'll get a train of thought going in a minute, don't worry. Even though I've not actually got it, I've not paid for it. However, that hasn't stopped it downloading to my Xbox One and holding 1.2 gig hard drive space to ransom, and putting itself as a grayed out option on the menu of the game, because that's the way that things are these days. That's the way that video games are. They not only do you have to pay for gated off content, which in this case I'm not too bothered about. I mean, it is a substantial addition to the game. And it's not like Forza 6 was light on content anyway, it's not. But even so, I don't like this notion that you have your hard drive space held to ransom by DLC that you haven't paid for. And the only way that you can get access to that DLC is to pay for it. So it's like, well, we'll fuck you over one way or the other. If you don't buy our DLC, we'll snatch the hard drive space off you. And the only way to get rid of that is to uninstall the game, so you can't play the game anymore. And you just love the business practices of the modern day games industry. It's such a shining beacon of light in consumer driven politics. I really struggle to think of another industry that puts itself at absolute odds with its customer base, where it actually actively goes to war with its consumer base, like the games industry does. It really does like to piss its customers off. And I guess when yet they moan about that they're concerned about lack of sales and all of this business. Yeah, here they are actively pissing off the very people that can put them out of business. It's like going into a tiger's cage and the tiger's asleep and it's happy. And you go in there and you leave it food and the tiger eats the food and it's happy. And one day you decide to go in with a great big stick and you jab it really hard up the tiger's arse. And the tiger turns around and swats your head off. Or does. Yeah, it swats your head off. And, and then it's like complaining about, the tiger just swatted my head off, even though you'd be technically dead. But, sort of in the weird limbo of an afterlife of some sort. Or in the few seconds that your brain is still functioning before the trauma and loss of blood causes it to shut down. You're there like, the tiger just swatted my head off. You act surprised that a mutually beneficial relationship that was profitable for all, you fucked over by deciding quite irrationally that you were going to jab a sharp stick up the arse of the tiger. The tiger, of course, being the consumers. And that's what the games industry has done. In the last 10 years, it has systematically worked to jab a sharp stick up the consumer's arse when it used to have a very mutually beneficial relationship. Which is always something I find really highly amusing. It's like the games industry got big by doing things a certain way that most people liked. Everybody liked. They made a game, you bought the game, you played the game, and that was it. And then when you finished the game, you went and bought another game. Or, you know, if you really like that series of game, you waited in anticipation for the sequel for that game. And then it's all of a sudden it's like the games industry was like, we need to somehow monetize it even more. How can we do that? Right, okay, here's how we can do it. Let's gate parts of the game off and put that behind a paywall. Charge people for content that's incomplete and then sell them a season pass or DLC or whatever for the rest of it that should be there. And for some reason the game sales have dropped as this practice has increased. If you drew if you did a graph to chart the increase of DLC and gated off content and microtransactions versus the actual sales of video games, and I don't mean overall, I'm not including free-to-play shit or iPhone shit or anything like that. I'm talking about proper AAA $60, £50 games. If you actually looked at that and was like, okay, no, I don't want copyright strike for Richard Hammond's voice. If you actually looked at that, you would see there was a direct correlation. Now, these companies employ all, they pay a shit ton of money to all of these marketing people. You would think that one of these marketing people might have seen the connection. Just thinking, just throwing it out there now. You would think that maybe one of these marketing people may have seen the direct correlation and say, you know the thing we used to do when we didn't have this problem and everybody seemed really happy? Why did we stop doing that? And why did we not carry on doing that when everybody was really happy? You would think that that would be what these marketing people would do, because that's the sensible thing. But they don't, because the marketing people like to establish themselves as the dead centre of a business and as the singular most important element to a business. I've dealt with marketing people before, and that's what they like to do. They like to put a business. They like to get a business in a place where they feel that they cannot live without them. They charge a business an absolute fucking fortune for stating the obvious. If people running a business actually took a minute to sit down and look at what they were doing, they would actually see that there's nothing marketing people are telling them that they couldn't have picked up or known if they'd just taken the time to sit down and look at their own numbers. And the games industry is absolutely infested with these marketing people, and you can tell because when people go up on stage at E3, the shit that they come out with is market speak, it's marketing speak. Like, marketing people said, let's stop referring to video games as games, because that makes it like it's only for children or young people. And because the average age of the game is getting older, let's make all it IP, intellectual property. This is our new IP that's coming out. It's a game. No, but it's IP. It's a game. No, but it's IP. Yeah, but it's a game. It's like saying there's a new. It's like if you worked in the automotive industry, you wouldn't say, ah yeah, we're releasing a new automotive vehicle or automobile. You would say a car or a motorbike or whatever, and then you'd even be more specific. Like Formula One racing doesn't just call itself racing, it calls itself Formula One. It's known by what it does. IP actually covers such a broad spectrum of things, because it's just all it is, it refers to intellectual property. So it's kind of like the games industry is almost ashamed of it. It's become ashamed of itself because marketing people want the games industry to refer to itself in different ways, and that's the patheticness of it, that's the ridiculousness of it. And you see how that has become rife throughout the industry, and it really is quite sad in many respects. But I mean, I think it's kind of funny, marketing people that have positioned themselves as being so important actually aren't serving the industry in any way, shape or form. Because if you're employing marketing people's sole objective is to increase sales. That's what they're there for. I had this work with this marketing guy. He came out to an IT company I used to work for many years ago. We used to call him Shiny Happy. He was one of these really annoying twats. He was also sort of a team building person and marketing person. Yeah, we showed him the door. Because under his leadership our sales managed to plummet, because he understood fuck all about the IT industry, yet he's trying to tell people who know about the IT industry how to run a company. And because like the boss at the time was like, okay, he wanted to grow the business. The business was actually doing very well when we brought this knobhead on board. It was actually doing really well. We'd had like a record year, and we bought him. The boss brought him on board because we wanted to maximise the use of the money that we'd made effectively. It was done for the right reasons. He didn't want the company to stagnate and then start to go back. He wanted to use the money that we'd made that year to grow the business, which was understandable. And I don't think he really had the confidence to know how to do it himself, so he brought Shiny Happy on board. And under Shiny Happy, he was there for a few months, and within that financial year, he'd managed to orchestrate a massive reversal because of the bullshit. You know, he started, use this terminology, use that terminology in your brochures and in your company speak. When you talk to customers, he went into his sales team, was telling them what words to use to customers. And yeah, he didn't understand the kind of customers that we were sending computers out to. We used to hire computers and design software out to architects and people that were working on projects, building things, because it's quite expensive. You've got a team of architects, or you've got a team of construction people that's working on a big project, you would generally get like, you could have quite a large number of people working on big projects to buy computers. At that time in particular, back in the sort of mid to late 90s, to buy top-end PCs that could run the AutoCAD software, it cost a lot of money. I mean, back in them days, RAM was nearly £1 a megabyte. So before you even got started, most computers back then were running off 128 or 256 meg of RAM. That was your starting point before you even added in the decent graphics card and processors and all that other shit. And the actual software itself, God, that was shite, calling it. The actual software itself cost £3,500 for one license for one copy, and you couldn't fudge it because each copy came with a dongle, which is like a hardware lock if you don't know what it is, and it's a thing that plugs into the back of the computer that essentially authorises the user of that computer to use that software. So you couldn't install it, say, on 5 computers, you know, on Dodge. I mean, this was in the days before the internet connectivity is what it is today. And that hardware lock, if it wasn't on the back of a computer, the software wouldn't. And it used to connect to the printer port on the back of a computer as well. So if you had a printer, you just plug through this device. So it's not like you needed a special computer. It was a very standard piece of hardware. But without this hardware, you couldn't run the software. Now, obviously, today people would say, "Oh, I would just get a cracked version of the software." But yeah, back then it wasn't as easy to get hold of stuff like that. And if you got caught, you were in a lot of shit. The company Autodesk actually provide software called Scaleform. You might see that in a lot of games now. Well, the Autodesk made AutoCAD software, and they guarded that shit like the crown jewels. I had to deal with them a lot in terms of every time they released new software, you had to send the hardware locks back, and they would then upgrade the microchips in the hardware locks and send them back to you. And they regularly audited your customers and all of that shit to make sure that they weren't using dodgy copies. And if they were using dodgy copies, you got in an absolute world of fucking shit like you wouldn't believe. I mean, they could immediately tell us back then, no, you're not allowed to distribute the software, and oh, by the way, we'll see you in court. So, how the hell did I get? Oh yeah, marketing arsehole. Yeah, shiny happy marketing dickhead that was running the business. Not running. Well, he tried to run the business. Yeah, he managed to fuck up sales completely because his marketing speak just nobody gave a shit about, and he screwed up the whole thing. The company never really recovered it from having a record year employing this marketing arsehole. It then went on a downward spiral for the next 2-3 years before they ended up calling it a day. That's the power of marketing people. Marketing people don't know about the product. They just think they know how to sell shit. And they quite often don't have any clue at all about the client base. I mean, we've seen companies within the games industry put people as CEOs from like Coca-Cola, Pepsi. What the fuck do they know about video games? Absolutely nothing. And they come in and within a short period of time the company's on its arse because they've tried to implement things that work in other sectors of the consumer base, shall we say. They try to implement them in video games. They have no understanding of their audience whatsoever, and they piss people off. You look at Konami, the guy who runs Konami, whose name escapes me at the moment, has openly admitted he knows nothing about video games, and it shows. I mean, he is completely fucked over Konami. Absolutely fucked over Konami. And that's it. I mean, you know, people now use the hashtag #FuckKonami, and it's because of this clown, because he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't understand the audience, he doesn't understand the market, because he doesn't know anything about video games, and it defeats the objective. If you're running a company, you should know as much as there is to know about the product that you're selling, and consequently you should also know as much about your target audience that you're selling to. And marketing people, these people listen to marketing people. It becomes their crutch. It becomes the thing that they rely on, because marketing people will tell them how important they are, whilst charging them an absolute arm and a leg. You want to know where the money goes in video game development? When all of these game publishers start saying, we can't make money we charge $60 for a game, or we charge £50 for a game and we still can't make money, that's why we need microtransactions and DLC. Because they pay a shit ton of money to marketing people. The same marketing people, and I've said this before, put people like Robert Downey Jr. in a Call of Duty advert on the TV, and probably pay millions of dollars for a 50-second appearance on the television to sell a game that was always going to sell anyway. And yeah, that's good business. No, that's being shit. Because Robert Downey Jr. isn't selling Call of Duty to anyone. He's Iron Man. He's nothing to do with Call of Duty. He's not, in fact, the only I don't know much about his career, but the only movie I can think of that he was in that had anything to do with any kind of soldiers was Tropical Thunder. So, yeah, not a great decision. I mean, the thing is, it's like, these same marketing people thought it was probably great to get Kevin Spacey in Advanced Warfare. Nobody bought that game because Kevin Spacey was in it. If you're really interested in the performance that Kevin Spacey's going to do, you buy a fucking film with him in. You don't buy a Call of Duty game where, he's basically Uncanny Valley digital puppet version of him. And let's face it, Call of Duty games are not necessarily renowned for their in-depth story. Most are actually renowned for being more like Michael Bay type stories, which is all explosions and bullshit. But that's the thing. That's what we're really sort of up against. Those of us that don't believe in the moaning and groaning that goes on when they say we haven't got any money. This is why we need to lock the content behind paywalls and shaft you up the arse with microtransactions out the wazoo. Sack your marketing department. You'll save a shit ton of money and your sales will go up, I can guarantee it. I got onto that by the fact that I had to endure waiting for a 1.2 gigabyte download for content that I don't own because I haven't paid for it to be applied to this game before I could play it this morning. It's amazing what can set you off in a bad mood. Well, not a bad mood, but just annoy you and inconvenience you. I would like the option, like you used to have. I don't like forced DLC. Because I'm not a big buyer of DLC, but I am a big player of games, and I lose a considerable amount of hard drive space to DLC content that I haven't paid for, and I don't want, because I'm not interested. Technically, I might be. The irony is, actually, I might have been interested in this Porsche expansion. 15 quid though is a bit steep for what is an expansion. But it's a difficult one because in the past with PC games, you used to get expansion packs for games. I mean, I remember the expansion packs for Half-Life, Opposing Forces, Evolution. They were really good, and I had them. But I guess it was the feeling that you were getting something that was more than just a bit of added content. They were actual whole chapters of a game. Not even chapters. They were whole complete storylines within the game. They didn't last quite as long as the main campaign, but they were very, very substantial. There was a lot of effort put into it. Now, for the love of God, fucking hell, the brakes on... Still not going to be able to take the corner from there. I am not crashing. I have to... Alright, stop, thank you. Brake from miles away. I would never even dream of trying to play this game without a wheel and turn the racing line off. I'm not that courageous. But this is a great game though. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite racing games. That said, I'm hoping Gran Turismo gets its act together, because that used to be my favourite racing game. Gran Turismo 4, I think, was probably singularly the most comprehensive racing game I have ever played on the PlayStation 2. Gran Turismo 5, despite being in development for 10,000 years, still didn't seem to... I mean, content-wise, I can't... Gran Turismo 4 seemed to have more, but I may have been mistaken. Gran Turismo 5 seemed to drip feed a lot of content out, and the disappointment was the what I call them at that point the high definition car packs, which I would say were the cars that were designed specifically for Gran Turismo 5. They were quite limited compared to the number of cars that actually was available, because most of the other cars were just high-res, upscaled versions of what was in Gran Turismo 4. You could always tell, because the ones for Gran Turismo 6, 5, and probably 6 as well, when you selected in-car view, the cockpit view was really impressively rendered. Very, very good. Very, very good to look at. The upscaled cars from GT4, they had this weird black cardboard cutout dashboard, which was like a generic approximation of everything, and they didn't look as good. The car models did not look as good, because they were just upscaled versions. And for a game that had been in development for so long, it was a massive disappointment. I would have rather have had fewer of the generic cars, the upscale cars, and more of the proper car models, and overall had less cars. There was too many cars. That sounds a daft thing to say, but there really was just too many cars. And the actual content in terms of racing, there was a lot of gameplay in there, but it felt very padded. And as for the whole B-spec, whatever the hell it was, thing where you basically manage a team or a driver, yeah, I'll be happy if they ditched that. I tried to have a go of that for a while, but there was nothing nice just sitting there watching the game play while you told it to speed up or slow down, while you actually did nothing else but just sit there. It's like you were like a chief engineer on a pit wall in a race, giving the instructions to the driver. I mean, it was a novel idea, but in practice, oh my god, it just got so boring. I don't want to watch the computer race. I want to fucking race myself. That's why you buy a racing game, because you want to race cars that most of us can't ever get the chance to race in real life. And most of us can't even afford the bloody cars, let alone race them on tracks. So there's no real appeal in sitting there and watching somebody else do it. So I'd be happy if they dropped that whole concept from Gran Turismo World, is it? Whatever, something like that. I'd be happy if they did that and then focused more on the actual content for the racing experience. For the love of God, can we have some different tracks? I want the tracks that Gran Turismo had, the classic tracks. I like those, but can we have some different ones as well? Can we have more? I'm more in favour of more tracks and less cars. That works for me. And when I say less cars, I don't mean give us 10 cars and then charge us an arm and a leg for DLC. No, I mean a good selection of cars, but not as ridiculous. Like, I don't need 10 different versions of Ford Fiesta. Thank you very much. Just give me a standard version and a race spec version and I'd be quite happy. obviously I want more than that as well. Off. Balls that up completely. Crying out. But I think GTA, I keep seeing that. GT5 has a, no, Gran Turismo 7 World, whatever the hell it's called, has got a lot to live up to. There's a lot more racing games in the market. Project Cars being one of them. I've got that on the PS4 and I think that's a great game. So it's got more competition and it needs to pull its finger out. So on a topical side note, and I'll probably cover this in a topical ramble at some point as well, is Microsoft making the announcement that all of their future exclusives are not going to be exclusives, they're going to appear on PC, on Windows 10. They're obviously using this now to try to push the Windows 10 operating system. So you can read into that what you will. There's a couple of things that I'm interested in thinking about with regards to that. First of all, pushing an operating system, we're seeing a lot more of it these days, where support for operating systems is dropping off at a more frequent rate. It seems operating systems are becoming more and more frequent, and the support for the older systems seems to be becoming more truncated, as is a drive to get people onto the latest thing all the time. For the home user, it can be problematic in the sense that you're always going to have certain pieces of software that aren't going to be compatible with the latest software system. And for business users, it's even more problematic because, okay, say your video editing software that you use every now and then to edit videos at home doesn't work with a new operating system. You wait for a patch. It's not, unless you're using it to make money, it's not the end of the world. But if you've got some some proprietary software at work, and a lot of the jobs I've had, we've had software specifically designed for that company's needs, and suddenly, Microsoft say, right, everybody get Windows 10, we're going to drop support for older operating systems, and that's not just necessarily, oh, you can't play games, because obviously for most people the inability to play video games at work isn't too much of a problem. However, when they drop support, they also drop security updates, which for businesses that is a problem. And then suddenly they find out that the software that they have won't work on the new operating system. I actually had this where one company, a security firm I work for, the security hardware that they had out, that they'd leased out to companies, at the time would not work with Vista. The hardware Vista would not work with it. Now Microsoft are about as much use as a fart in an astronaut suit when it comes to fixing issues like that. They say, not our problem, you need to go to the vendor of the hardware to get them to update the firmware. Well, you kind of become at an impasse then, because if the hardware vendor isn't going to update their hardware, because then they'll turn around and say, well, it's not our fault, it's Microsoft's fault, we've done nothing, you then have a problem. And that can essentially mean that you can't do your job and your business can't provide a secure service anymore. that becomes an issue. So I think there's more than one way to look at these things. You know, pulling the use of support out for older software might not be as bad for the home user, but for businesses it can be a massive problem. And at the moment it's not too bad. At the moment they will support previous versions of software that go back a ways. But that backed up security thing is becoming more of an issue. So that's one of the really neat things is the puddles in this really do open the handling of the cars. Like in most of the racing games, the whole track would be generic. What I mean by that is, no matter where you are on the circuit, it would be the same. Everywhere it would be a uniform setting. With the puddles of rainwater in this thing, when you run through that, those specific ones actually adversely affect the handling of the car, which is it may have been in other racing games, but certainly not the racing game has had that kind of a profound effect on the car. It actually pulls the car into it like you would do in real life, because the wheels are going through denser material than air. So if the puddle is deep enough and you're travelling at that speed, if the side of the car that hits the puddle actually decelerates, it becomes slower than the other side and it pulls the car into the puddle, which is what would happen in real life. If you've ever driven a car through a puddle along one side of your car, the side of the road in real life, he pulls the car towards the curbside. So that's a really neat feature, and I hope that does become standard in racing games, because it does work. It's not a gimmick. It does work. Sometimes if you've got a considerable amount of the puddle, it's best to hit it full on with all four wheels, then you don't necessarily get pulled to one side. It'll slow your car down, but it won't have a greater impact on the actual handling of the car as if you just put one or two wheels into it. like that. So yeah, the other thing, so that really was what I was talking about, the OS system. You know, for games it's not too bad. I think that a lot of people that would be buying PCs these days, Windows 10 come installed as standard anyway. It more affects businesses, this idea of redundancy with operating systems, but it's just Microsoft's way of pushing people onto the Windows 10 platform by their own exclusives becoming available. Some can argue, well, this is going to throw a spanner in the works in terms of making the Xbox One an attractive console to buy, and they probably have a very good point there. I don't think for current Xbox One owners it's worth getting your knickers in a twist over. I don't foresee Microsoft suddenly, they're not going to suddenly stop making games for the Xbox One. That's going to happen. I suspect it's shifted enough units to warrant its existence. But obviously, if you were a PC owner, for example, your PC could play games, and you... Fuck off, I'm not doing that again, I can rewind. And you bought an Xbox One because you wanted to play the exclusive games. You know, Microsoft exclusive games do tend to be really good. You know, in my opinion, they do anyway. You know, the Halo games, Gears of War, the Forza series, and then, you know, I don't know anything about Quantum Break that's coming out, whatever it is. I can never remember the name of things when I need to remember them. Jibber jabber. But yeah, those exclusive games on the Xbox do tend to be very, very good and very popular. And if you think about it, if you were a PC gamer and you thought, you know, I really want to play Forza, it's a really good racing game, I'll go and buy an Xbox One. Because if I use it for nothing else, at least I can use it for the exclusive titles that come out. And then you buy it, and then it's like, oh, you know, so you bought it when Forza 6 came out. And then all of a sudden Microsoft turn around and say, oh, but we're bringing you Forza 6 in some form. I think it's going to be bare bones, but in some form to the PC. You're going to feel a bit jibbed, because you've not only just bought a game, spent the money on a game, which would be bad enough because you would pay more for the Xbox version, PC version anyway. You've bought hardware that you didn't need to buy, and you've made that investment, you've made that commitment, you've supported that company that then turns around and says, yeah, well, fuck it, we're going to release it on the PC anyway. Now, obviously, like me, I'm not a PC gamer. My PC gaming days are in the past. I can't afford to get the PC gaming rig that would be worthwhile having instead of a games console, because games consoles are pretty much where my budget can only stretch to. The only reason I've got what I've got is because, you know, there were gifts, very generous gifts. My family got together and bought me a PS4 and then later an Xbox One last year for my birthday and for Christmas and my birthday respectively. They're the only reasons that I have these. There's just no way. I mean, I have a laptop, an old MacBook Pro, and I have an old iMac now. It is old. It's 6-7 years old. That's what I have, and I couldn't afford to buy a decent gaming rig PC that would be that would give me an experience in games better than games consoles. I just couldn't afford it. So for me it's not really an issue, but there are a lot of people out there that do have PCs that will have bought games consoles for the exclusive games. And what Microsoft are basically trying to do is they're trying to homogenise gaming platforms, Windows 10 and Xbox One. They're trying to blur the lines between them, and I think it's essentially they're trying to... I don't know about this, but I've got a feeling that Microsoft are going to go back to being service-based. think you're going to see them go more down the path of software over hardware. Certainly listening to what Phil Spencer was saying, I don't think we're going to see another standalone Xbox console. I think the idea of upgrading the Xbox One as and when the time is necessary seems to be the path they're going down. Now how that's going to work, I don't know. I imagine it's going to be like the 32X upgraded the Mega Drive. It was like a modular thing that you plugged in. I imagine it being something in a similar vein to that, but you know, history shows us that wasn't successful in the slightest, and Microsoft really do need to pay attention to that, because that damaged Sega in the long run. It certainly damaged their reputation, the Mega CD and 32X. Whereas in terms of the hardware itself was decent. I mean, the 32X gave a shot in the arm for the Mega Drive until the Saturn came out, which was a true 32-bit console. The 32X wasn't. It's actually 16-bit processors working in tandem rather than one 32-bit processor. But it did its job. I mean, it enabled the 32X, enabled the Mega Drive to do things it couldn't do without it. And the same with the Mega CD. But commercially, they were failures because they were too expensive, and there wasn't enough games, there wasn't enough killer apps because the hardware didn't sell. Games companies didn't have the confidence in making exclusive content for the 32X and the Mega CD. And I mean, what was out? There was a lot of good stuff. There was a lot of shit, but there was also a lot of good stuff as well. I mean, I had a 32X, and the 32X version of Doom was my definitive Doom experience until I got a PlayStation. And so, yeah. You know, it was... it had a knock-on effect. It damaged consumer confidence because obviously people went out and bought these very expensive add-ons. I mean, at one point they cost more than buying the Mega Drive itself. And within a shortish period of time, the Saturn came out, and the Saturn essentially rendered all of that stuff useless because it was a proper 32-bit CD-based console. And the consumers that had invested in the technology were left high and dry. If you bought the 32X and Mega CD, you were essentially left high and dry with expensive add-ons that essentially put the Mega Drive on life support to no avail at the end of the day. So the Saturn just didn't do as well as what it would have done. I believe not only did it have to deal with the attentions of the PlayStation, which was considerable, Sony threw the kitchen sink at that thing at the time. In terms of marketing as well, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. Sega realised they'd miscalculated. The PlayStation was more designed for 3D games. Sony really anticipated where things were going. The Saturn was capable of 3D stuff. It's a common held mythology that it wasn't, but it had to be in the hands of people who knew how to do it. This bastard doesn't get out of the way in a minute. Whereas the PlayStation was a much more easier platform to develop for compared to the Saturn in terms of 3D. The Saturn really sort of was designed to perfect the idea of 2D gaming, platform gaming, that kind of thing. God, this car is awful. It is awful at handling. That's what the Saturn really was focused on. and the people got all distracted. It's like, oh, 3D games, and I don't mean games that needed 3D glasses. That nonsense. I mean games that was actually like Doom, games like Tomb Raider. Ironically enough, people always associate Tomb Raider with PlayStation. Actually, it was a Saturn game. And yeah, it just goes to show that, you know, in the hands of the right kind of developers, you could get some pretty impressive 3D. I actually have Quake on. I have a Sega Saturn, and I have Quake on it, and that is a really good version of that game, in my opinion. I had Quake on the PC. That's obviously was the definitive version. I had the big box version of that with all the add-ons and all of that kind of stuff, all in this huge box with loads of discs. In fact, I've still got it somewhere, and that was a monster. Yeah, I love the original Quake. A lot of people didn't like it because it was sort of a sci-fi set in a medieval world. It was a very bizarre setting, but I actually thought it was pretty fantastic. Thought it was a very, very good version of. I thought it was a very good first-person shooter, and the Saturn I thought was a very good version of that. Obviously, it was compromised, but it was still very good, and it had the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack on it, which really made that game. I love the Nine Inch Nails. The soundtrack, Quake, was fantastic. And then Quake 2 went proper sci-fi, had a more cohesive story being set on the Strog homeworld, humans invading the Strog. It kind of almost was missing a prequel. In fact, that's what people need to do. Go and make a prequel to Quake 2. Because Quake 1 was completely different. Quake 2, you know, the Strog have attacked Earth or something like that, and you fought them off, and then now you go to the Strog homeworld, and that's where the game picks up. I want a prequel. Call it Quake Origins. Something massively original like that. Yeah, tell the story of the Strog invasion of Earth, which has remained untold as far as I'm aware. And then you can do a HD remake version of Quake and all of its content and stick that in as a bonus. I'm not asking much. There's absolutely zero chance of that happening these days. That's the kind of thing. When I got Quake 4, it came on the Xbox 360. It came with Quake 2. It came with a Quake 2 disc. They converted it to the Xbox 360. And it was great. It was great to go back and play that. And yeah, there's zero chance of them doing a prequel to Quake 2 and then including the original Quake on the disc or in the box. Because they don't do that kind of shit anymore. They'll probably lock it behind DLC and charge you 30 quid for it. Yeah, Quake is definitely one of those Marmite type games. People either seem to like it or loathe it. I love it. I thought it was great. Quake, it harkened back to the day where people weren't afraid to take risks in terms of game design, and you know, they were prepared to do something that was completely off the wall and original in its art design, in its setting. Like I say, to have a sort of semi-sci-fi, medieval, demonic Bizarro universe, where really the things just didn't sense. You can see then that jump when they made the sequel. Then it's like, let's do Space Marine fighting cyborg in space. And that's where Quake stuck to, you know, unless you discount Quake 3 Arena, which was, you know, just a multiplayer shooter thing, which was very good as well. There was a fucking car. There was a lot of decent tech in that later became standard in first-person shooters. That's another game I have on the 360. I have it on PC. I spent many hours playing it on PC. But I have the version of the Xbox 360 as well. Interestingly enough, sod all people were playing that online when it came out. I thought I'd get more online games with it because obviously Xbox Live and all of that. And like Ghost Town was it? It was interesting at the beginning, but it quickly died off. I think people get very easily distracted by the latest thing, and despite how good something is in the past, it quickly dies off. I'd be interested to see if people still play Call of Duty 2, because as I understand it, that wasn't dedicated servers, that was player hosted. Hence why it had a limited number of people playing multiplayer. But Call of Duty 2 was another outstanding game. And they messed that up. Booked it up. Which is a combination of ballsed it up and mucked it up. Awful. It's like the reason I'm not using the cockpit view is because I have an in-game mod which gives me more credits for being stuck in the tail view. And it actually plays alright in tail view. Some racing games, trying to play in the chase camera view like this, they're absolute dog shit. And that's another race down. Another win. But yeah, it's a shame that they don't really do things like that anymore. I was always confused by I have the Handsome collection for Borderlands on the PlayStation 4. Just two fantastic games in there. I love me some Borderlands, even though it can frustrate the hell out of me at times and become a bit of a grind fest. Yeah, it has Borderlands the pre-sequel and Borderlands 2. It's like, is there a reason you didn't put the original Borderlands in there with its DLC? I mean, the other two have all of the DLC as well. It's the typical Game of the Year edition stuff. But it's like, why didn't you put Borderlands in there? It's like these days they have to kind of skim. Silent Hill collection, the Silent Hill HD collection was the same thing. I have that on the Xbox 360. In fact, I'm just grabbing the box now because I want to be sure. That has two games, Silent Hill 2 and 3. Where was Silent Hill 4 and where was the original Silent Hill? Why just 2 and 3? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, I suppose one could argue, well, they'd have to redo the original Silent Hill because, like, graphically it was, you know, PlayStation game, so graphically it was even worse. It wasn't that easy to make a HD. Nobody really... Look, that's a bullshit excuse. You could have released it as it was. Okay. And people would have accepted it for what it was in the day. Alright, you didn't have to remake the whole game with new shiny graphics. And what about Silent Hill 4, Silent Hill The Room? That used the same graphics engine, did it not, as Silent Hill 2 and 3? So why is that missing? It's like, if you're going to release a collection of games, an anthology of games, put all the fucking games in it. I don't care. if you put the original Silent Hill in, and yeah, it has, you know, the dodgy, polygon-tastic graphics of the original PlayStation, so be it, you know? So be it. That's what it was in its day. You know, this obsession, it's just like, well, I mean, that's just typical Konami. Let's release a thing that's called the Silent Hill Collection, and at that point leave 2 games out of the collection. I mean, okay, if you don't want to put the games in that were next-gen games, like, well, it would be the PS3, Xbox 360 gen games at that time, I can perfectly understand that. You don't want to afflict the sales of that, but the others, no one, you know, it's like, how can we release a collection of games that ultimately isn't really a collection of all the games, but we'll take probably 2 of the most favoured versions of the games and release them? That's not a collection. That is not a collection of you can't call it the Silent Hill collection if you're just going to release 2 out of the 4 games that was, you know, in the series at the time, simply because of the fact that you can't be fucking bothered and you just want to be cheap. And like I say, there's someone on somewhere that they'll have this explanation for why Borderlands isn't in the Handsome collection. To which I just say bollocks. There's no reason why. I guess it's obviously got something to do with Handsome being the handsome Jack, so I guess he wasn't maybe in Borderlands? I can't remember because it's been that long since I played the original. And the same with Borderlands 2 actually. I can't really remember if he's in that, but I'm getting the feeling there's a character in the pre-sequel called Handsome Jack, who's one of the main characters in it. I'm assuming it's got something to do with him, so that's probably why they've omitted the original Borderlands movie. Come on, for fuck's sake. It's like they released when they released Doom, the BFG edition, they put the original Doom and Doom 2 on the disc, and then they didn't put Final Doom on the disc, or what was the Final Doom and what was the other thing? They put I think they did put the master levels of Doom 2. But they omitted Final Doom, and then they released Final Doom. They then released Doom and Doom 2 as DLs, as download games, and in that they included Final Doom. Now, this is where my hypocrisy comes to the fore, because I'm always like, that's bullshit, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, and this is where hypocrisy comes to the fore with me, because I've ended up buying that version of Doom as well, and Doom 2, because I wanted Final Doom. Again, I have Final Doom on the PlayStation, but it's got a lot of content missing. It's good because I love Doom on the original PlayStation, but there is an enormous amount of content missing, and I wanted the definitive editions of it. Even though Doom and Doom 2 are my favourite games on the PlayStation 2, they're my favourite versions of Doom, I acknowledge they're not the definitive version. They're my favourite version for other reasons, so that's why they're my favourite version. How long do you have to break for? Yeah, I guess, you know, it really does dial into the old adage that, you know, value is very, very subjective. I've always been reticent to tell people they shouldn't pay money for something, if they feel that it's value to them. Because what's value to somebody else represents a rip-off to another person, depending on how much you love something. I mean, there are people who will go to extraordinary lengths to be able to get the money to get something because they really want it, and they will pay a ridiculous amount of money to get it. And there are, there are other things you wouldn't pay the money for. I mean, it's the same with video games. There are people that, I mean, I, for example, would not have paid full price for the new Rainbow Six Siege game because it's online multiplayer only, but I got it for £25 from Argos, and I've played online multiplayer quite a few nights since I've got the game, and I would say that I've had that £25 worth of entertainment out of it. Would I have paid full price? No, because I know that come next week people will probably be playing the Division, and it'll get more and more difficult to get games of Rainbow Six with people that I know. And it's value then. If it had paid full price, it's like I haven't even got a comprehensive single player campaign to fall back on. I mean, the one good thing with getting it on the Xbox One was the fact that it had Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2 from the 360 included as a code, so you can download them, and then you can also, because they're backwards compatible with Xbox One, you can play them on the Xbox One, which is fine. That that does add some value to it. But I would never have paid £50 for it. There are some games I'm not sure whether I'll like, and I'll wait for them to come down in price. As I say, I got what's it? The Evil Within. Oh Jesus, that's because I looked at The Evil Within on the shelf. Just rewind that. And again, yeah, The Evil Within and Sunset Overdrive for 20 quid. I had to mute my microphone audio then because some body with a fucking vacuum cleaner decides to go around every fucking day. Anyway, I really hate the sound of a Dyson vacuum cleaner. I have mild tinnitus, which is like a mild ringing in my ears, and the Dyson vacuum cleaner emits a very high-pitched whistle because of the root cyclones that are on the damn thing that suck up all the thing off the carpet, and that high-pitched whistle amplifies the ringing in my ears. It's like somebody coming up and blowing a whistle in your ear, and I can't stand it. I cannot stand. I'll have to get out of the way when that bloody thing's on. If I have to use it myself, it's like I can't stand it. It's like nails down a chalkboard to me. I hate the bloody thing. Like the traditional vacuum cleaners before all this cyclone bollocks came out, I never really had much of a problem with. Yeah, my mild ringing in my ears comes from listening to 1980s and early 90s heavy metal on my Walkman too loud for multiple hours a day, going to and from school and college, and then attending multiple heavy metal and other types of heavy rock band concerts very, very frequently throughout the 90s, and going to Rock World in Manchester every week in and week out throughout most of the 90s. Fuck, arse, piss, fucking car. Miles ahead anyway, you can get on the pissing track. Yeah. when somebody comes along with a high-pitched whistling vacuum cleaner, it kind of irritates me somewhat. It's better than a kick in the teeth. Okay. Right. Well, that's that series of races done. I think I might leave it there for this stream. I just wanted to get a stream done this morning. I think I'm pretty much done. Just going to be racing pretty much the same thing. I'll probably do another Forza 6 stream at some point. What have I got left? Not got bad. My objective is to finish these touring series, professional racing series, and then I've got one more to do to try to 100% them. So anybody that's been in on the stream, no comments in the chat, so don't know how many people were in it, but thanks for watching, and I will no doubt have another stream. I will certainly have another video on my YouTube channel up soon. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys.